All right. I'd like to welcome everyone here this morning. We're here for today's Litchfield's Town Deliberative session. My name is Steve Perry. I'll be serving today as your moderator. I live at 5 Lidston Lane in this town with my wife, Catherine, of 24 years. 23 years this year. We have a daughter and son, my daughter Hannah and my son Nathan. They've both graduated from this school. They're on to college. That's my life. That's my story. If we could all please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I will also apologize in advance because I'm just getting over a pretty nasty chest congestion event here, so I may have to clear my throat a few times. We have a few administrative announcements before we can start. So before we commence our meeting, in consideration of the warrants, there are several housekeeping matters we need to discuss. State law prohibits smoking anywhere on school grounds. Restrooms are located just past the auditorium on the right. Emergency escape exits are located in the back of the room using the doors you entered, to the immediate side of the stage as well as the back of the stage area where these folks are seated. Unfortunately, food and drink is not allowed in the auditorium. Special consideration has been granted for those of whom have to speak and are on stage. Please silence or turn off your cell phones so that we don't disturb any parts of the meeting. Only those that are authorized to vote today may sit in the center and left sections of the auditorium. Those who are here today to observe need to please be seated to the right as you enter. We will start with some introductions. I would like to introduce the officials who will be hearing today. You will be hearing today and presenting the information and address questions. I will ask each chair to introduce their boards as well as others present. We will start off with Board of Selectmen Chair Steve Weber.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Good morning and welcome. Representing the Board of Selectmen today, you have myself, Stephen Weber, Chairman. You have Mr. Bob Leary, Vice Chairman. Mr. Kevin Lynch, Selectman. Mr. Rich LaSalle, Selectman. Dr. Kim Queenan, Selectman. We also have Joe Driscoll, who is the Town Council from the Mitchell Municipal Group. We have Kim Kleiner, who is our Town Administrator. Karen White, Finance Director, Assistant Administrator. Terry Briand, Town Clerk, Tax Collector. Michael French, Police Administrator. Doug Nickel, Interim Fire Chief. Kevin Brown, Road Agent. David Mellon, Transfer Station Manager. John Burnell, our IT Director. Vicki Varick, Librarian, and the LCT TV staff.
Okay, I would now like to welcome Mr. John Davidson, Budget Committee Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Joining me today with the Budget Committee is Kate Stevens, Vice Chair, Derek Barca, Brian Burke, Carrie Douglas, William Hayes, Scott Taylor, our Selectman Representative Bob Leary, and our School Board Representative Tara Hirschberger. Thank you.
Thank you. I would also like to acknowledge the Assistant Moderator, Mr. John Brunel, who is here today, and I thank him for helping me in these duties. All right, so we're on to the rules and procedures of this meeting. Litchfield is operated under what is known as Senate Bill 2 procedures. This means that our goal today is to review, discuss, and amend, if necessary, the warrant articles that have been presented by the Board of Selectmen and the Budget Committee for our votes on Election Day. Election Day will be here at this school on March 14th from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. down in the gymnasium, as we normally do. If we make no amendments to these warrant articles, they will appear on the ballot as you see them today. If we do make amendments to these warrant articles, then they will appear on the ballot as they have been amended. For this deliberative session, the moderator will read each warrant article and recognize a speaker. The moderator will then open the floor for discussion, questions, and proposals of amendments, if appropriate. If a voter wishes to propose an amendment, he or she must present the moderator with a signed written draft, including their street address, where I will review for amendment and completeness and adherence to the law. The moderator will read proposed amendments so that all voters may understand, and afterwards seek a second for the motion. Once a motion is moved and seconded, I will recognize the sponsoring voter to present his or her motion. It is contrary to the rules or procedures to discuss a motion before it is properly moved and seconded. Index cards are here at the front, right in front of me in the podium here. Nice colorful sheets with some pens for writing down your amendments. Note that by state law, amendments will not be in order if they change the primary subject matter of the original warrant, nor can negative motions be made to amend. A no would be tallied as a yes vote. I know that doesn't sound right, but it's not. We may not have more than one amendment under consideration at any one time, so no amendments to proposed amendments. We need to consider each proposed amendment separately. Every effort will be made to give recognition to all those that wish to speak. If you want to speak, you must come up to one of the microphones in the front, state your name and address for the record. Board members, if you want to speak as a member of a board, you will come to the podium on the stage. If you are offering your own opinion as an amendment or as a citizen, you need to go down to the floor to do that. When you're speaking, please clearly state your name and address. This information aids the moderator as well as the clerk who takes the minutes for deliberation. Any motions to end debate must be made immediately upon a voter arriving at the microphone after stating their name and address. A moderator will seek a second to that, and we will put the question to the voters. If the motion to end debate is successful by gaining a simple majority, the moderator will immediately call for a vote on the question currently under consideration. All those who speak are to keep their remarks pertinent to the motion under consideration and must hold their remarks, we're going to say, to no more than 3 minutes within reason. Personal attacks and profanity will get you shut down immediately. All speakers will direct their remarks to me as the moderator, and in the case of questions, I will call upon the appropriate person to respond. One follow-up question will be allowed. However, running discussion is usually forbidden in the interest of both time and fairness to the others that wish to speak. Please try to avoid redundancy. Proper respect and decorum will be expected at all times. According to state law, the town and school district meetings are run by what we call moderator rules. This means that, as I am doing now, the moderator sets the ground rules for the conduct of the meeting. However, law also allows you, the voters, to overturn my rulings by simple majority vote. To overturn the moderator's ruling, a voter may request a point of order to overturn the moderator immediately after the moderator rules. The moderator will then recognize the voter who may, if decided, explain his or her point of order. The moderator will then poll the voters, and if a majority agrees with the voter, then the moderator's ruling will be overturned. A motion to adjourn will not be accepted until all warrant articles have been discussed and finalized. A motion to table an article will not be in order unless it's made to table until a specific time and place in today's agenda before the close of the meeting. A motion to reconsider an article after it is closed will not be in order unless there are no warrant under consideration. Example, you need to do it between warrants. And until the second is approved by a simple majority vote. Reconsidering articles must be discussed and closure reached before the end of this meeting. A motion to restrict reconsideration of any or all previous warrants will not be in order unless there is no warrant under consideration. It must be second approved by a simple majority vote. All those people who are on the checklist as qualified voters are permitted to vote at any time. If the moderator receives a complaint or notices a non-voter voting, then I will require the non-voter to leave the auditorium. Voters are asked to sit in the middle sections in the front, and then the right section, and the left section, and non-voters in the right section as you walked into the room. As you came into the meeting today, the ballot clerks gave each registered voter a sheet of yes, no ballots, nice colorful sheets. These are yours to use for secret ballots if requested. Please do not drop them on the floor or leave them behind before the close of the meeting. Please turn them back into either the moderator at the front of the stage or turn them in at the table as you exit the building. The moderator must conduct a secret yes/no ballot when 5 or more voters makes a signed written request to the moderator prior to a voice, hand, standing, or division vote on the article. Sorry. The moderator must also conduct a recount of a secret ballot immediately after the public announcement of the vote when requested by 5 or more voters are presented, and provided that the vote margin is not more than 10% of the total votes cast. The moderator must also conduct a secret yes/no ballot when 7 or more voters challenge any verbal or hand vote immediately after the vote results are declared by the moderator and before any other business has begun. This challenge can be verbally or in writing. Remember, under Senate Bill 2, Town Government System, you have a secret ballot on every warrant article come election day. Approval of all warrant article amendments at the deliberative session shall be by a simple majority vote. A voice vote will be the primary method of voting today. If the moderator cannot distinguish a clear majority with a voice vote, then a standing vote or raised hands will be taken next. Over the course of the meeting, there will be many opportunities to use acronyms. I ask, however, the board and committee members who discuss the article refrain from using acronyms. It is unfair to assume that everybody knows what the acronyms mean. For example, throughout today, you may hear the reference to an acronym RSA. This term means Revised Statutes Annotated, or simply state laws. Okay, it is your prerogative to permit non-voters to speak at this meeting. It has been customary to allow employees, council, and non-registered residents to speak at these meetings. If you wish to continue to do so, please signify by saying "Aye." Aye. Those opposed? We have it. The ayes have it. We have the right to. We have members eligible to speak. Now, we get down to the business part of our meeting. I can't read that. So Article 2 is our zoning amendment. It's a demolition review ordinance. Amends Section 1040.00 demolition review ordinance to make the ordinance applicable to buildings that are 60 years old or older rather than to buildings prior to 1960. Amend Section 1042 demolition review ordinance to read as follows. Language to be added is shown in italics. Language to be removed is shown in strike-through. Any part of a building in the town of Litchfield will fall under these terms under this article. A proposed demolition is greater than 500 square feet of gross area, and the building was constructed prior to 60 years or earlier time of submission of demolition permit. On this, we have Planning Board Representative Kate Stevens.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Kate Stevens. I'm the Vice Chair of the Planning Board. Our Chairman, Michael Croto, could not be here this morning. I just wanted to walk through a quick explanation of this article. This ordinance was passed a few years ago, and the intent was just to create a pause in the demolition process of a property to allow the Heritage Commission to discuss and evaluate the architectural, historical, and cultural significance to the town, and possibly document the property with permission by the owner. Property owners would still have the right to do with the property as they wish, and the change is to recognize that as time goes on, buildings newer than 1960 may be of interest to the Historical Society. So a quick example of this in town might be the well-known Pink House, which was built in 2005. If, but hopefully not, in 50 years, the beloved family who lives there were to sell and a new owner chooses to demolish that house, this would give the Historical Society the chance to discuss potential documentation of the house and the beloved families who have lived in and love that house for the town. The current ordinance would not require that pause in the demolition process because the house was not built before 1960. And so this ordinance change is just to allow that the cutoff for the potentially historically significant buildings to keep rolling as time goes on. Are there any questions? No? Yes.
Questions, comments from anyone? Please come up to the mic.
Marion Colby, 318 Charles Bancroft Highway. It's not the Historical Society, it's the Heritage Commission.
My
So,
apologies,
I
Mrs.
mean,
Colby.
two separate organizations, one is a town organization, one is a private. So the review of the property would be done by the Heritage Commission.
My
Thank you.
apologies, Mrs. Colby. I wrote down the wrong acronym, I think. That's why we stay away from acronyms at these meetings. Any other questions? Thank you.
If there are no other questions, you will see Article 2 as written. Article 3, the operating budget. Shall the town vote to raise and appropriate as an operating budget, not including appropriations by special warrant articles, and other appropriations voted separately, the amount set forth in the budget proposed with the warrant or as amended by the vote of the first session, for the purpose set forth therein, totaling $7,673,829. Should this article be defeated, the default budget shall be $7,716,898, which is the same as last year with certain adjustments required by previous action of the town of Litchfield or by law. Or the governing body may hold one special meeting in accordance with RSA 13 X and 16, 10 and 16, to take up the issue of revised operating budget only. Estimated 2023 tax impact is approximately 11 cents. Speaking on this, we'll have Budget Committee Chair John Davidson.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator, and good morning, everyone. I would like to walk through some of the highlights of the operating budget and the process that the Budget Committee went through to develop the budget this year. Our process began with town reviews on the following dates: September 29th, October 6th, and October 13th. The Select Board delivered a budget to the Budget Committee after their Select Board meeting on October 17th. That budget that was delivered to us was $7,965,711. This represented an increase of $552,674, which was 7.46% higher than the FY 2022 approved budget of $7,413,037. This budget also was over the tax cap by $246,281. And just as a point of reference, the tax cap is an increase of $175,000 over the prior year's taxes raised. And before we take a look at the work that we did as a committee, as we went into the budget hearing on January 12th, the Budget Committee is legally obligated to present an operating budget that is below that tax cap at the annual budget hearing. The committee can only recommend to pass warrant articles as well that when they're combined with the operating budget do not exceed that tax cap. At town deliberative today, if a warrant article with appropriations is amended, the committee has the opportunity to re-vote their recommendation of an article, which we would do after deliberative today. An operating budget that is amended at deliberative is no longer the Budget Committee's presented budget. The committee will re-vote their recommendation of the article, and in that case, the committee may vote to recommend the amended budget regardless of the tax cap. In taking a look at the work that the Budget Committee did in the fall, we reviewed and voted on the Select Board budget on October 20th, 2022. Some of the actions that were taken included the police department reduction of $182,891, debt services of $25,000, the fire department, $18,180, the highway department, $11,847, the library, $11,785, and then additional reductions that totaled up to $41,093. And real quick, I'd like to speak to the police department reduction because that is obviously a large number. That number, the majority of that number represents a current position that is not filled by the police department. Total budget committee reductions represented $290,796. We also made additional reductions to the operating budget at our January 5th meeting in order to be able to recommend Articles 5 and 8. If you remember, I talked about we couldn't recommend articles that put us over the tax cap, and as a committee, we felt strongly about endorsing and recommending Articles 5 and 8, which you'll see later, and so we made some additional reductions to the operating budget in order to be able to support those. The presented town budget by the Budget Committee currently stands at $7,673,829. This represents an increase of $260,792, which is 3.52% over the FY 2022 approved budget of $7,413,037. We are currently under the tax cap by $45,601. And with that, we'll entertain any questions or comments for the operating budget.
I'd like to make an amendment.
Okay.
Steve Gannon, 12 Nesson Drive, Litchfield. I make a motion to amend Article 3, Town Budget, to add $8,000 back to the bottom line budget.
I have an amendment. Do I have a second? Second. I have amendment and a second. Discussion?
So the purpose of this is, my name's Steve Gannon. I'm the chairman of the Litchfield Recreation Commission. As many know, a lot of town and organizations took an impact to the budget cuts. So I made this motion for the primary purpose of restoring some of the funds that were cut from the Litchfield Recreation budget. The Litchfield Recreation Commission is responsible for 7 properties in town. 5 of those properties have play fields, soccer, baseball, softball, lacrosse. One of those parks is Roy Memorial Park, which obviously has Dara Pond, the playground, the basketball courts, and of course, Talent Hall. The Litchfield Rec is more than just sports. We're actually a community. We build a community. Some of the things we did last year is we restored the fishing derby, which has been silent for multiple years. So last year we had close to 100 little anglers come down to Parker Park and fish for the first time. If you have ever attended the Summer Fun Day, the Fall Festival, or the very popular holiday tree lighting event that occurs in December, those were all put on by a subcommittee of the Litchfield Recreation Committee called the Spirit of Litchfield. So we do a lot of community building. We are one of the smallest budgets in town, but I believe we have the highest positive impact on town. The Budget Committee has a very, very tough job to do. I applaud their efforts and really respect the work they did. Could not have been easy. They made a difficult decision to stay under the tax cap and reduced a lot of budgets, including ours. 2 of the line items that hit us hard is, one of them is our field maintenance. This is to repair damaged fences or irrigation heads that frequently occur. The second one is the facility and capital improvement line. This is what we use to keep Talent Hall open. The building was built in 1954. It's very old. It's showing its age. Some of the money we had targeted to use this year would be to repair and replace some of the faulty plumbing equipment in that building. As we speak today, one of the bathrooms in the ladies' room is closed because the toilet is leaking. We can't repair it anymore. We need to replace it. So all the fixtures in that building are really showing the age. We're fortunate to have Talent Hall. A lot of towns do not have an indoor recreation facility, and they have to work with their schools to get time inside the building. So Talent Hall is used 7 days a week from 7 a.m. to 8:30 p.m. every night, and there's always a demand for use in Talent Hall. So I am here asking for support of our residents in restoring the funds to the LRC so we can continue providing the services and community events that we do. Thank you. Mr. Moderator?
Questions or comments on the amendment?
John Latcher, 10 McElwain Drive, Litchfield, New Hampshire. You were originally going to use opera funds for that, weren't you?
No, ARPA funds were going to be used for the installation of pickleball as well as putting a new irrigation at Talent Hall. I mean, at Royal Memorial Park Fields.
We got $656,000 for the fire engine that we're using for opera funds. I know we got a loader too that we're going to purchase as well. Do we have $8,000 left for opera funds? Can I ask the town administrator?
Kim?
How much is the loader?
Kim, could you go up to the mic, please?
Yeah.
So at the last selectmen meeting, the loader passed and has now been purchased. That's about $151,000. There's also the fire truck. There was also some police tasers and some IT equipment for the police that passed in December.
So it's exactly $1 million?
It's the ARPA allocation, which was just a little over $900,000.
Okay, so you still have $100,000 left?
No, we do not. So between the fire truck.
How much was the original? How much, you had $1 million in opera funds, correct, originally?
No, we had a little over 900,000.
A little over 900,000?
Yes.
Okay, but you received $1 million, right, correct?
No.
No? Excuse me? 904,000? And how much did you say the loader was? I'm sorry.
151.
151,000.
And then there's the warrant article for the fire engine purchase.
Okay. All right, thank you.
No, go ahead.
Tim Kearns, One Brickyard. So did we spend money on the fire truck, or are we going to spend money on the fire truck?
It's set aside for.
It's set aside, so
Should it pass, the money.
should it pass? So really, that's kind of up in the air. There's 8,000, if it doesn't pass, there's $8,000 available for that, right? So that's kind of up in the air. So we haven't really spent it. There is $800,000 still floating around. Question you, I live on Brickyard Drive. Every spring, of course not this spring because the public service is coming, but it's lined up and down with people from out of town. Do we charge fees for the use of the fields?
No, we do not.
Well, why not?
We actually discussed that as a commission, and it was
Yeah.
really recommended by the town council not to, because it puts us into a different category where there's a lot to it, but we basically, there'd be expected levels of service, and we're no longer a public entity, I guess you could say. We're no longer a recreation commission. So it was really voted or recommended strongly, do not charge fields. So we do have a hierarchy of who can use our fields, and we also have some verbiage in there at the end that if we wanted to, we could. But right now, our fields in Talent Hall is heavily used by just town sports. We've got Litchfield Pickleball Association. It's just, right now, we don't have enough openings to allow somebody from out of town to come use our fields.
Okay, so, but if they do use the fields, there's no charge for them, and then we just have to fix them when they're done?
Well, I think I know what you're talking about. There's always a vehicle on Brickyard that has Massachusetts license plates that we don't know what he's doing back there, but it's not an organized sport. And if there are
I'm just talking
cars.
about the teams and teams, you know, there's a morning cycle where they park up and down, there's probably three.
I think we need to get back on
I'm
track
sorry.
to the amendment, which is to add $8,000
So
to
we
the
don't,
operating budget.
we have money in the fire trucks that would not necessarily fend, and then we don't charge anything for when people use the fields, that's all I
And
want.
if you ever want to talk to him, we'll meet up.
Any other questions or comments?
I'm going to speak now as a Budget Committee member, Carrie Douglas. I appreciate your request, and I absolutely recognize the need for investing in those. The reason I will vote no is because this is a bottom line budget. We could add those funds with the absolute intent of funding your needs, but if something comes up somewhere else, they could be used for a different purpose. There's no guarantee that adding those funds will go to the purpose we would like them to see. So one of the reasons why I encouraged each of our departments to look at what we need to invest in our various departments on an annual basis to meet their needs and look at creating specific funds for that. That way those funds would be available in a dedicated source. So I would encourage the Rec Commission and any commission department in town who is looking at investments in their facilities to look at the 5-10-year investment, and let's start planning for those and setting aside the funds so that they are available as you need them. Because right now, adding them here doesn't guarantee you access to those funds. So it's not that I don't believe you need them, I just can't guarantee you'll get them through this situation. So please look at a way to make sure you have the funding available. I just don't think this is the way of doing it.
Is there a way possible to add those directly back to the Litchfield Recreation Commission budget?
It's a bottom line budget, so even if we put them there and something comes up somewhere else, they can be moved. So, like I said, I applaud your request, I understand your need, I just don't think that this guarantees your need gets funded. I think there is a different way of doing it. Thank you.
Thank you for your input.
Scott Taylor speaking as a Budget Committee member. As mentioned during the meeting when we went over the Rec Commission budget, if you take a look at Sawmill, for example, groups that use that, i.e. sports organizations, helped fund that. There are other groups that also are willing to accept and do funding. If we take a look at the beautification calendar funds, look at the amount of stuff that we were able to do via donations from the community, from industries, from companies, for example. I encourage that instead of moving forward with adding to the taxpayer burden, you first go through the folks that are using those particular facilities and leverage their ability to be able to give you what you need, and it'll probably even be more than the amendment. Questions?
That is something that we have discussed with the various organizations, and it was strong pushback. They're already paying money into it. They do donate some of their funds back to the town or the rec, but a lot of the purpose of those organizations are for youth sports, and that's something a lot of the family members just are not, they do not like the idea of increasing more cost to play sports to support what a lot of people believe the town should be providing.
Just as a counter to that, I know that building the lacrosse organization, you'd be amazed at how much people are willing to pay a few dollars more in order to have quality facilities, i.e. we were able to increase fees in order to be able to rent an exterior facility over in Bedford in order to improve. And I think, certainly if you take a look at the pickleball, for example, and the fact that we are building pickleball courts, you know what, there's obviously strong growth in that particular area. Again, I would just encourage the taxpayers from the Budget Committee perspective, my vote against or reducing the Recreation Commission was around the fact that there were exterior sources that have been leveraged in the past and I believe should be leveraged at this time. Thank you.
Thank you for your input, Scott.
Any other questions, comments?
Hi, good morning. Peter Ames, 21 Moose Hollow Road. I am a member of the Recreation Commission. I just want to speak to the need for the amendment. The process we did pursue was through the normal budget process where we did ask for those funds. And what I wanted to highlight was they were there to really make sure that we have the ability to keep Talent Hall and the fields online. A relatively small expense for an unanticipated break of something could result in us not being able to keep Talent Hall or the fields open. And so that is our priority, is to have the flexibility to make sure that town residents have access to those fields. So we certainly understand that every department has been asked to take some pain in this process, so I have nothing but empathy for what you've had to go through with that. Our priority is, again, to keep things open. We're not looking to build upon anything new. This is really to make sure we can keep what we have available to residents. Certainly, the note about asking for, participants to take some of the burden, our priority is to make sure that youth have access at an affordable level to maintain involvement in recreation sports. They are already paying as part of their leagues, as well as the associated costs with equipment, that type of thing. So that's not something that we want to place a burden on, but it is something we have talked about as part of the Recreation Commission for out-of-town or private vendors. But for the youth in town, that's really important that we want to keep that burden as low as possible. So that was our thinking along those process, but would ask that you support the amendment so that we have that flexibility to fix things that came up that would be relatively cheap, but would have a very large impact if we were not able to fix them. Thank you.
Any further questions or comments?
Jason Brennan, 23 Aldrich Street. Steve, I have a question. It's also my understanding that the funds that were cut, that you're asking to be reinstated, included cutting the fishing derby, cutting funds that would fund the Fall Fest and the winter, what is it called again? Christmas in Litchfield, and other community events. Is that true or false? Because I'm hearing a lot here about Talent Hall and the parks, but are you also, does that fund, do those cuts also include cuts to those programs?
When I looked at the sheet today, no, it does not appear that. That would be our program expenses, we call it, which is a lot for the community building, the Fish and Derby, Spirit of Litchfield events. That appears like that line item was not cut. The two that were really, well, there's several that were cut, but the two that hit us hard is, as Peter mentioned, the maintenance and really maintenance for the fields and Talent Hall.
I'm for reinstating this just due to the fact that as someone that has kids that have gone through the school system and now I'm getting older now, the number one thing that we have in this community are community events, number one, and the use of our recreational facilities. So this is like a top thing for me. So I'm for the amendment. Thanks.
Thank you, Jason.
Any other questions or comments on the amendment? Hearing none, we'll call this to a vote. All those in favor of adding $8,000 to the operating budget, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say no. No. We're going to go to a hand vote because I don't have the best hearing in the world, so if we could all raise our hands for yes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 24, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42, 43, 44, 45, 46, 47. We have 47 yes.
Are the people on the right supposed to be voting?
The people in the right that are in the back rows are the ones that did not raise their hands at all.
I didn't know because I understood the way it did, everybody to the right, so I just checked.
It's usually the back couple of rows that we have for the non-residents. All those no's, please raise your hand. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. The yeses have it. It's 47 to 10. So that means we now have an amended budget to add $8,000 to the bottom line of the operating budget. Questions or comments on that? Seeing none, it'll be on the ballot as amended.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. And while I have the mic, the Litchfield Recreation Commission has 3 open positions for alternate members. If anybody would like to participate in our group, we'd definitely welcome you. Email us at rc@litchfieldnh.gov. Thank you.
Nice sales pitch. Okay, so now we move on to Article 4, amending the tax cap. Shall we adopt the provisions of RSA 32(5)B and amend the tax cap whereby the Budget Committee shall not submit a recommended budget that increases the amount to be raised by local taxes based on the prior fiscal year's actual amount of local taxes raised by no more than 5% rather than the existing 175,000. The estimated tax impact on 2023 is 0. Okay. On this, we have Town Administrator Kim Kleiner.
Good morning. First of all, I started in October, and I want to thank you for allowing me to be here in your beautiful town. So just a bit of background information. The local tax cap is an estimated amount of it's based on the local estimated taxes to be raised. There seems to have been some confusion in the past, and that this is an increase in the budget. That is not the fact. So the tax cap is a limit on the local taxes to be raised. And the the tax cap does restrict the amount that the budget committee can present to the town. So the budget committee, as the chair noted earlier, cannot recommend a budget at the budget public hearing that exceeds the local tax cap. So just a little bit of history, and this happened not too long ago, so I'm sure it's very fresh in many of your minds. The actual tax cap was presented back in 2016 on the 2016 warrant. And initially, the warrant wrote that it was to be an amount not to exceed 5.5%. It was changed on the floor as it was brought to you to a fixed amount of no more than $175,000, which, if you look at the tax levy back then, was really just a tad over 4.9%. So while it's important to think of, yes, it sounds like in the warrant, the article we've presented to you, that 5% is a large percentage, the 175,000 back in 2016 was almost the same. The article was brought forward again to you in 2017, and as the $175,000, important to note that back in 2016 and 2017, both passed. So here is the tax cap calculation, if you can read it from back there. And what we're trying to illustrate here, and hopefully you've got a copy of the slides where you can see it easier, is we take the prior year tax levy, the amount that needed to be raised by local taxes, and we add the $175,000 to that. Now, the tax cap is also impacted by revenues. And that's important because, as you know, revenues do increase and decrease. And generally, they increase and decrease based upon the economic conditions. So when there's more money passed down from federal, more money passed down from state, you'll see increases in revenues, and you saw some of that. We were lucky to get some large highway funds, which helped to pave the roads. We were lucky enough to get some one-time pension reimbursements, and also some bridge money. That was one-time money. We don't expect to see that in the coming year. So as your revenues decrease, so does that space within the cap. It's also impacted by the veterans credit. That is a reduction, and then the overlay, which is the basis that we put aside for any abatements on property. So the important, one of the reasons or the challenges that we've faced in the past couple of years is that the tax cap isn't calculated just on the budget increase, right? It's the revenues that I spoke about, and it's inflation, which all of you see every day when you go to the gas pump, the grocery store, open a utility bill. The town is seeing that as well. So we all know that that $175,000 today doesn't buy the same goods and services that it did back in 2016. And that's important to note because that in itself is restricting the budget. Before any additions or before any reductions, keeping that fixed amount of $175,000 is already affecting the services that we can provide for the same amount of money. What we have brought forth is, so this is the change in the consumer price index. And this is a monthly measurement of the average change in cost that all consumers pay. And you can see what has happened since 2017, where it averaged about 2.1 till the end of 2022, where it's 8.3. Again, certainly nothing that any of you haven't felt in your wallet as well. What we're looking for by going to the percentage is we're asking for that tax cap to be able to move the same as all of our finances do, and for it to work into the inflation and the cost and the economy climate of the time. Again, back then when it was originally brought to you, it was 5.5, although it was amended on the floor. We're asking for a change to 5%. The normal question that even I would be asking is, what does 5% look like, right? That's the important question. Based on the budget right now, as we know it, and certainly we will have some updates to revenues, which generally come in August, September timeframe, that 5% would be approximately $75,000. Now, that itself can be concerning, and I certainly understand that. But you have a budget committee that certainly goes through the budget and does keep it in line. You have seen very moderate increases from 2017 to 2022 in the municipal tax rate. So I think that the selectmen and the budget committee, they're watching the costs. They're very thorough in their questions that they ask, and they're going to look at, is there really an increase in the services as they're provided that is based on the economic climate? Do we look at, and we as a town administration, we look at efficiencies and we look at how we can bring those things in, but the economic climate and the inflation does not make $175,000 today what it was in 2016. Most communities are based on a percentage. It moves. And certainly it can always be altered by coming back to deliberative and by the taxpayers. I'll just leave on this note before questions. In 2017, when you actually implemented the cap, the municipal tax rate was $4.32. In 2022, it's $3.98. I think that the selectmen and the budget committee and the residents of Litchfield have done a fantastic job keeping expenses in the town under control.
Questions or comments?
Tim Kearns, One Brick Aaron. My question, I understand most of that, but I'm noticing that there's a $74,000 difference, you're saying. But then I'm going to point out to the last sentence in the posted warrant that talks about no tax impact, no tax rate impact. So you're up here telling me that there's a difference of $74,000, but there's no,
Great question. So in 2023, the 2023 budget is in front of you. The tax cap wouldn't take into effect until the following year.
understand, but how did, as there's no appropriations with this, how did you come up with a no tax impact statement that says that there won't be any tax impact?
There's no tax impact for 2023.
But there's no appropriations either, so how did, I don't understand how
There's no
that
appropriations needed.
comes to work. So if the article that lets us put in a tax impact has to have, don't put that language in there, you have to have an impact, but there is no impact, how does that work?
What language are you referring to? So this is not a article that requires a tax impact because there's no tax impact for 2023.
So
So I think we've been very clear as to if the article was to go into effect, and there's nothing to say that the budget that would be brought forward for 2024 would be
I understand that
an
part.
additional.
But it doesn't talk about spending money, it talks about capping the appropriations of money. So how did you, I mean, how do you get I can understand if we're talking about spending money and we talk about tax impact, but here we're talking about not collecting
Okay.
any money and having
So-
no appropriations, but yet you've been able to declare that it has no impact when it
So-
really isn't related anyways. So what does the language serve to
So
do?
just a little bit of and I want to be clear because I think this is very important. So the tax cap does not limit necessarily the budget, right? So it's not eliminating or putting a cap on what the budget comes in at. As I noted on the slide, and I can go back to it if you'd like, the $175,000, which it is now, is applied to the local taxes raised. And the local taxes raised is an indication of both your budget, up or down, what revenues that you're going to receive, again, up or down, depending on what you receive, and the veterans tax, the veterans credit in the overlay. So it's not just, we're not just talking about suspending of money.
Understand. So that the last part really has no, the last sentence has no impact on the entire warrant at all. Doesn't make any interest. The no tax statement impact has nothing to do with any of that at all. Very good. I'd like to propose an amendment.
Okay.
Oh, no, I was just going to say.
If they remove that last statement, that has no bearing.
Well, speaking as a budget committee member, I think since there are dollars included within the wording, I think they placed that so that they know that even though there are dollars presented, there is no money being raised. Ultimately, what it does, it allows the budget committee, when we debate and discuss, it provides an opportunity to fund those programs like the rec commission. There'll be the $8,000 that they just requested, we would have had room within the budget to consider, because as our budget increases, as we have bigger expenses like the fire tower, the communications tower, those are big ticket items, and when they get applied against the tax cap, it chews up any other increases, electricity increases, gas increases, fuel increases, wage and health insurance increases. So by being more accurate and reflecting that as our budgets go up, we should also increase as a percentage, whether it's 5% or some other percentage. It allows us to have a more reasonable budgeting number within, framework within which to work. So yes, there's numbers shown, there is no tax increase, and there's no guarantee that the Budget Committee or the Board of Selectmen are even going to spend up to that amount. But when a committee comes in and asks for a small number that is reasonable and needed, we'd be able to actually fund it. So that's where that stands.
All right, so,
I think I agree with you, and that
Let-
my amendment speaks to that, and then.
yep,
what
let's
she
go
said
with
was-
this amendment.
Yep.
So we have amendment, do we have a second? Actually, sorry, the amendment is to strike the last sentence, which is, that only states, estimated 2023 tax impact of 0 cents.
It has no other impact on the articles or the money and anything expended or raised.
Do
Just
I have a
removing the
second?
statement.
Second. Any discussion on this amendment?
Can you reread it, please?
Say it again? So I'll say it right there if you,
I need to be able to visualize it in my head.
Read the amendment?
Yes.
The amendment is to strike the last sentence, which is to remove estimated 2023 tax impact of 0 cents.
Can we do that?
doesn't change anything other than removing unnecessary words from what you just told me.
Since there is dollars associated with it, can we do that? I mean, there's dollars written into the article.
Our attorney representing today, Mr. Driscoll, will answer that.
Good morning, Joe Driscoll from the Mitchell Group. We're your town council, in case anybody came in after the introductions. This would go to RSA 32.5 under budget preparation. So the requirement that this town made at a prior town meeting was that you required that the annual budget and all special warrant articles having a tax impact, which is in the entire focus and wheelhouse of your select board. They determine what the tax impact is and what the actual number would be, that shall contain a notation. That is here. That's a requirement that you voted on in the past, so I would say that this.
So my question goes exactly to that, if I can ask through you. It says, having a tax impact. Is that the words that you used?
Shall contain a notation stating the estimated tax impact of the article.
So shall I read it to you? Because you just read it aloud. I have that right here. And it says, anything having a tax impact shall be done. And if it doesn't have a tax impact, as it says, no tax impact, how can it have a tax impact at the same time? It says, the notation can be made, and I've got it right here. I wrote it. Sorry.
I have it if you'd like me to read it.
Well,
Any town may vote to require, which you have done,
yep.
that the annual budget and all special warrant articles
Having a tax impact.
As
Having a tax impact. yes.
as determined by the governing body.
I agree.
The governing body is the select board.
And they
They've
have determined that there's no tax impact.
They've determined that,
There's no tax, it says no tax impact. So how can you put something in, if they determined to have an impact, they determined that it didn't have a tax impact, and they wrote it there, that's opposite of what it says.
they determined the tax impact was 0.
Right, so that means it doesn't
They're-
have one, so how can you put one in
They're
if
determining
it doesn't
two
have a tax
things.
impact?
Whether they're the definition of tax impact as it
Yeah.
applies to you and your budget, your warrants, et cetera,
Mhm.
and they chose to include this.
Right.
There was a prior vote that required these to be listed on your.
If
on
they
your
have a
budget
tax
for
impact.
For special warrants.
Okay, let's not try to have rolling debate.
Okay, well, we tried to address this earlier, but I never got an answer, so now this is the only place I have to ask it.
I'm sorry, what was that? I didn't hear what you said.
I said I attempted to ask this earlier, but I hadn't got an answer back, so this is the only opportunity I've had to ask this question publicly.
Okay? And the answer has been made by town council.
Right, and I agree that we don't have a tax impact, and we can remove that because we're the governing body, and there's no question to that, right? Is this a legal motion?
Again, what I have said is that your past vote as this town is required that you indicate the tax impact. What that tax impact is, both the definition of tax impact as well as the dollar implication, is in the purview of your select board.
Well, actually, it's in the governing body. Aren't we the governing body today?
You are the legislative body.
Okay.
That is a distinction. You are the legislative body, they're the governing body. Just like it's their warrant, they've presented that to you. Your past requirement is that it exists, so they've placed this on here. So there's potential that this invalidates the article if you choose to undermine it at this level.
I disagree with
Based
that
on a-
strongly. You're over
based
here
on
to
a
represent
past
the
vote.
selectmen, correct? Not necessarily the board. Do we have the legal, sorry, do we have the legal right, is this an illegal amendment? Is it legal?
Is what legal?
The amendment that I've proposed, is it legal? You determined that you could make that determination earlier. I'm asking
You
if it's a-
submitted an amendment
Right. And
the
you-
appropriate way.
Correct.
It's his determination whether it's legal or just.
I thought that was your determination. You said that was your determination.
I'm not going to overrule the rules that are set forth.
Oh,
He's interpreting the rules for us as a group. I'm going to support what he
do you
says.
represent the body here, sir, or do you represent the board?
I represent the town. That's what we've
The
been retained to
legislative
do.
board.
And I'm giving you as I see it. You have voted in the past that it shall include a notation.
If there
Your-
is an
your amendment
impact.
would remove that notation. I don't know.
And the fact that the selectmen put it on there
Which
means
is-
that they determined it needs to be there,
Yeah, which is
and it
within
can't be
their purview.
changed.
And we, as a legislature body, can change that today, right? We have, if the votes are there, I'm not sure they are or not, but indeed, as the process, if we voted for that amendment, it would be put on the ballot as voted on. Is that a correct statement?
It would be on there, but there'd be a question about its validity.
Just because we removed the language?
All right. So is this, are we valid to take this or not?
You can take it, yeah. There's a question as to whether it undermines the final vote on the article. If it's amended.
Okay.
I can see it going, honestly, both ways. It definitely undermines the article.
So if it passes without this wording, is it passed, or do we have to revote it again?
I guess DRA would have to make a
We'd
a
have
judgment.
That'd be a good DRA question, honestly, if they'd let that happen.
Okay. So then I will move forward with this amendment.
Andrew Cutter, 6 Moose Hollow Road. I'd like to call the question, please.
Thank you. All right, so we have an amendment to the motion, to the article that is to strike the last sentence that says estimated 2023 tax impact is 0. I will call us to a vote. All those in favor of this amendment, please say yes.
Yeah.
All those opposed, please say no. No. I would say it was significant no. So with that, we are back to the tax cap as presented. Any other questions? Hearing none, you will see that.
Mr. Moderator,
Oh, I'm sorry.
John Davidson, 169 Charles Bancroft. Speaking on behalf of the Budget Committee, I want to mention something. Ms. Kleiner mentioned this when she was talking about it. You see that this was recommended by the Budget Committee 5-4. We had some very spirited conversations around this as we looked at the numbers that were shared with us by Ms. Kleiner. And I think it's really important to note that at least as this board is currently constructed, with a few of us up for reelection, we don't look at that 5% as an automatic increase every year. I think we had to sharpen our pencils this year, and our view of this as a budget committee is this gives us flexibility that we need when times are tough, like it was this year, but we're not going to assume that the budget is going to increase every year by 5%. We know we have that flexibility when we need it, and we're going to do our jobs to try to present a responsible budget for the town. So I just want to make sure that's reflected, as that was the general consensus of our discussion as a budget committee. Thank you.
Okay. Ms. Stevens?
Kate Stevens, speaking as a Budget Committee member, I did vote in favor of this article, and I just wanted to bring this to here. But one thing that I think Ms. Kleiner might have mentioned was that an SB2 town cannot use the consumer price index for all urban customers as their basis for the tax cap. So even if this 5% passes, what I would like to see from the Budget Committee and the Board of Selectmen is in these years where the consumer price index for all urban customers is around 1 or 2%, I'd like to see that be some sort of policy or something to hold us to a lower tax cap than just that full 5%. Because right now there's a rhetoric of, well, the tax cap is at $175,000, so we're going to start here and see what we can fit in. This year was extremely difficult to fit in what was necessary. But on these years where that index is lower, I'd like to see some sort of policy that holds us to a lower number than 5%. Thank you.
So, Tara Hirschberger, member of the Budget Committee, and I would like to speak to the minority position of this. And I was one of the people that voted against this because when I looked at the total appropriations year to year, including the warrants that got passed every year, this town is looking at almost a 4% increase in the town budget, including that. And you know, this year, the select board did not give they took very little actions to reduce the budget before giving it to the budget committee. So that concerns me. You know, I just think that for me, like looking at the 4%, that's your baseline, you know? So then there's a potential 5% increase. So for me, the 5% was just too much. You know, I would have supported, you know, 3 or 4%, but 5% was just too much because, and yes, I know that the budget committee would do the job to get it under the tax cap, but I feel like the select board needs to do really some, you know, they need to ask some hard questions and make some priority decisions that I felt like weren't made this year. There were people from their own departments coming to them with ideas for cost savings that I never heard discussed at all in any of the select board meetings. So I would be in favor of amending the tax cap to 1%, but just not 5%. Thank you.
Okay. Any further discussion?
I would echo Tara's position in that I agree with this in principle, that it does need to be a percentage. I don't know that I agree with 5%. I do, looking at it, 4% seems more in line with what we've been improving, what we can see as being needed, and would still have provided us a little more breathing room with providing for the town's needs. 5% seems, just philosophically and like mentally, 5% seems high. So if I were to propose an amendment to reduce it to 4%, can I just cross off the 5, put a 4, or do you want me to handwrite the whole thing?
You can just say you want to amend it to 4.
I would like to amend it to 4%.
I need it in writing.
I was gonna.
I need it in writing. Name and address, just like everybody else.
So I will write it out saying that I would like to amend it to 4%.
Okay, so we have an amendment to go to 4%, and I hear that we have a second before I call for it, so the second is there. Any discussion on this amendment? We'll wait for her to write it out so she can give a final discussion point, and then we can vote.
Can we give Ms. Douglas a second, if she has any discussion?
Any discussion? No,
I didn't know if you had any discussion.
my only discussion would be that 4% seems to be more in line. It still gives us an increase, still gives us room to work. And if it doesn't work, and if we find ourselves still constrained, we could come back and discuss it. It wouldn't be the first time we would have amended a tax cap increase.
Technicality, I have to have it before I call it.
I know, well, I was hoping to slash it to 4%.
Stephen Weber speaking on behalf of the Board of Selectmen. So the proposed amendment is actually going to put it lower than when it was originally put in place. So if you looked at the budget in 2017 when it was implemented, the percentage would have been 4.9%. So the amendment's actually going to put us backwards.
How much would we have provided this year? For an annual cost, what would the tax cap have been this year? It would have been higher than, it would have been 199,000.
Kim Kleiner, Town Administrator. So I think there's an illustration here that it's important to discuss. So I understand that a percentage, anything that can go up and down, can be particularly concerning. To speak a little bit to the amendment and why we went to the 5% is because the 5% is going to allow us to keep your services consistent. So we went out and we did it with the budget committee. We walked through, if you look back, we went out 10 years and we looked at what's it going to, in the current economic climate, what is it going to cost us to keep your services as is? That's where we developed the 5%. Back when the original cap was put in place, and we understand the importance of a cap, we understand the select board is very adamant at keeping your rates low. So there's always things we have to look at to do that, right? There's efficiencies, there's different services, but to keep it as it is, that's the amount we knew with the current economic conditions, if there's a change in our revenues, which is being suggested to us that we be very careful and conservative with our revenues, because both the municipal association, both the state is looking at some of these revenues decreasing. So back in 2017, that 175 was 4.9%. The amount that was originally brought forward to you was 5.5%. We're not asking for that. We're asking for the basic minimum that we need to keep your services at a consistent level. And I don't see that happening at 4%.
I'm Amber Flint. I'm at 123 Hillcrest. I just have a question. So when we were talking about Article 3 about the new budget, I believe it was reported that we, with the new budget, we didn't meet that, we're not at that tax cap.
We're under it now by 45,000.
Okay, so we are still under it, even with the new budget that we're about to be voted on.
Even with the added 8, so we're now 37,000 under the tax.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so we have the amendment in front of us to change the wording from 5% to 4%. Nothing else will change other than that. We have it voted on, we have a second, so we'll call this to a vote now. All those in favor of this change to 4%, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? No. Okay, so we're going to do a hand vote again. I don't hear that good. Sorry, Ralph. I have half of my hearing on one side. Here we go. So all of those in favor of the change, please raise your hand if you voted yes. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 11. All those that voted no for the change. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42, 43, 44, 45, 46, 47, 48. There's 11 yes, 48 no. So that means we now have the warrant as presented at 5%. Any final comments? Questions?
Hi, Bob Leary, 172 Charles Bancroft, speaking as a selectman. The comments that the selectmen punted on the budget this year or the expenditures is quite frankly a crock. With the added cost of fuel, electricity, water, gasoline and diesel, and one union contract put us over the tax cap before we even started. So we made cuts, we did the best we could, and I quite frankly don't think that the comments that were made by certain members were very professional in context. And I would like to know if anybody knows where we spent money frivolously, because I don't think we did. I think we did a very good job watching out for the taxpayers. And if you watched the meeting the other night, we had some money returned to us, and my first comment is always give it back to the people. And our board has never voted, that I know of, to take money that was earmarked for one item and put it towards something else. We're a very conscious board. Thank you.
Any final questions or comments? If none, you will see that on the ballot as written. Next, we have Article 5, Human Services and Health Agencies. Shall the town vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $20,600 to support human services and health agencies providing services to the town of Litchfield? Estimated tax rate impact for 2023 is 2 cents. On this, we have Board of Selectmen Chair Steve Weber.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. So at town meeting several years ago, there was a warrant article which established a committee that would look at the Health and Human Services asks. We have the welfare officer, we have a health officer, and we have a citizens representative. Every year, different agencies will come in and ask for donations to help them for the services that they give to our community. So this committee sits down, they look at all the asks, and then they go back and they look and they said, okay, of these asks, how much is used by Litchfield residents? So we wanted to directly impact the Litchfield residents. This funding will help support medical, mental health, housing, food, heating, and other needs of the residents in surrounding communities. So if you look at the funding this year, this is what they recommend that we give it to. So you have the American Red Cross at $2,500, Big Brother and Sisters at $500, Bridges at $1,200, CASA at $500, Family Promise at $5,000, Greater Nashua Mental Health at $2,000, Home Care and Hospice at $6,500, Lamprey Health Care at $800, Meals on Wheels, $1,100, and United Way 211 for $500. So the total ask will be on the warrant for $20,600, which is slightly lower than the ask for last year, which passed.
Questions or comments on that?
Ralph Bohm, 6 Gibson Drive, also state rep, and I'm also on the Hillsborough County Executive Committee. And one of the questions is, on the county, we budget and pay for these same services. So I'm just wondering is when you look at these services, do you look at the county budget and how much the county's paying? Because that's your county taxes. So to me, it looks like we're funding the same thing and at the county at a whole lot higher level to take care of all these services, and then we're finding the towns and cities are doing the same thing. So is anybody looking at the total, and have you looked at what the county is giving to these agencies, the exact same agencies? And I know Bridges, for example, just got a whole bunch of opera money. So I'm just concerned about why are we and the county, and which is your taxes, paying for the same thing?
Ms. Kleiner, as part of the organization membership, could you come and speak, please?
So there is a committee made up of a citizens rep, the health officer, and the welfare administrator for the town. And we look at the financial statements. They are required to submit those to us. We also look at a review of the services and the funding that they have requested and whether that is directly impacting the town of Litchfield and Litchfield residents. So while there is certainly a county appropriation, and there are many appropriations from many surrounding communities, What we find is that the amount of money that they are asking and requesting from the town of Litchfield is serving our residents, and it's in line with the budget that they have submitted and their financials.
Question?
Brian Dodge, 10 Heron Drive. I'm curious a little bit about the bottom line budget, how it affects the 20,000. Are these guaranteed funds to this group or groups, or can it be reallocated like we talked about with the Rec Commission's request?
If this warrant article is successful, it goes directly to these agencies.
Okay, so how does the Rec Commission get their guaranteed money? I don't know the background of how the budget works. You know, the 8,000 that they're missing, how do they get it so it's guaranteed the same way they get their money that's guaranteed?
Well, this is different. This is a warrant article, so these monies have to be spent for this warrant.
Okay.
When it's on the budget, it's a bottom line budget, so those monies could be allocated anywhere within the budget. However, as a Board of Selectmen, we always try to allocate to the lines where it's at, to the point even if that department overspends a line, we want to know that because we need to know, are we funding that line the way it should be funded? So we like to see lines go over, under, whatever, because that's the best way we can bring a budget forth to the Budget Committee.
So every year this is a warrant article?
This is a warrant article every year, yes.
Okay, that's good to know. And the recommendation from the Budget Committee to recommend this as for taxpayers to pay for it versus not recommending something like the Rec Commission, because charity can be involved, fundraising can be involved. I'm curious about that recommendation.
Correct.
I'm curious about the recommendation. Why would the Budget Committee recommend that, citing things like charity, citing things like raising fees, but then recommend the taxpayers to pay for something like this, which I know it's beneficial. I'm not saying it's not beneficial. As a community, we should give back to groups.
Sure. Yeah, John Davidson, I'll speak how I voted on the Budget Committee. Certainly anyone else is welcome to speak as well. I think there's kind of two parts to your question. So using the recreation as an example, the $8,000, we know that that's a bottom line budget. And if the Board of Selectmen see that as a priority, then they have the opportunity to reallocate those funds within their general operating budget. Because this is a special article, to Mr. Weber's point, we know that these funds go directly to the organizations that he listed up there. I think, we felt like this has been a tough year for everybody in town. And this is an opportunity to help some of our neediest people within the community through this particular warrant article. One of the things that's, I think, really important to us as a budget committee is we know a lot of times when people go to the polls, they look at these recommendations as they're voting, whether the Board of Selectmen supported it and whether the Budget Committee supported it. And so I think we felt like, I mentioned this earlier when I was talking about the operating budget, that when we initially started voting on warrant articles, we were already over the tax cap. And so just in order to be able to recommend this particular warrant article, we had to find that money within the operating budget. And that's how we felt, obviously 900 strongly as a committee, that these funds were important.
Which is, again, I support these things, but which is cutting from the whole group, the whole town, to benefit smaller groups. Taking away 8,000 from that department.
Right.
So we can fund this department.
And in fairness, again, if the Board of Selectmen sees that as a priority, obviously those funds have been added back in at this point. So, but whether it's through fundraising, whether it's through the bottom line budget, there were opportunities for that money to come back into rec if needed.
Okay. Again, I support all this.
Yeah.
I'm just curious about that.
Yeah, thank you.
So I voted obviously against adding the 8,000, and it's primarily because it is not guaranteed to go. I absolutely have no doubt that this Board of Selectmen will try their hardest to make sure that that department gets that money. But as we've seen, things happen, right? If something happens somewhere, they have to find the money to find something of some nature, then everybody could be tapped. I don't know. So the lack of guarantee there is where. Here, we've seen this one for many years. In the past, actually, I believe it used to be in the budget. Correct. And then it came as a warrant article with individual items, and then we created a board that would review the requests. So what you see is the basis for how we got to the 20,600, but there will be a group, 3 people, 4 people, that sit down and review each request and then determine how that money gets parceled out. There's a review process. The money is there for groups that service the people in town. So in some way, I used to be have a different position on this, but then I've seen that these actually service people in town. They're services we're not paying for directly, other than through this way. We get the benefit of them helping people in our town. But they're reviewed. People decide, hey, I think this group should get this much and this group should get that much. It's a review process, which is why I support this, and because it's dedicated for a specific purpose of helping these agencies. So my vote no earlier had nothing to do with not supporting rec. It just was the lack of dedication fund for that.
Okay.
A question, I think it's mostly for the Board of Selectmen, but as we go through the rest of the articles tonight, there's a bunch of them that have lots of money that are coming from the non-assigned funds. How come this one isn't coming from the non-assigned funds and has a 2% tax rate? And as we go further down the list, there's things for expendable trust funds and things that we're just going to put in a rainy day fund that have no tax impact listed. They're spending, the one I'm looking at to start the thing is Article 11 says $40,000, and it doesn't have any tax impact because it comes from unassigned funds. How come we don't take this money as Article number 5 from the unassigned funds? How does that work?
This has historically always been a warrant article, and we feel that before you go and give money to the charities, the people should have a say if they want to give the money to the charity or not. So instead of us assigning and say, yeah, we're going to go do it, we'd rather give it to the citizens to say, do you want to go fund this?
I agree, and I'm 100% for this. I'm asking, I'm assuming it's the selectmen, chose to put this as a tax burden, when we go further down the list, there's a lot of warrants that don't have a tax burden because they're coming from the unassigned fund. How come this isn't assigned to the unassigned fund and have a tax rate impact of 0?
Because we historically brought it this way, and this is the way we feel.
No,
that
but I
it's
mean,
best for
yes,
the
warrant
community.
articles I understand. Warrant articles can have a tax impact, but what I'm asking is, who decided to take it to charge it to the tax rate
The
as
Board of
opposed to
Selectmen
the
did.
unassigned funds? What was the logic behind that? Why is it more important those are needs for stuff, and then we have more money going into just rainy day funds that aren't coming out of the tax impact? You get what I'm saying? The funding of this warrant is what I'm asking for. Why is this one being funded from the tax impact
Because
money
we
and the
felt
other
this
one
one
not?
should go forth to the public. Do they want their tax dollars to go to under-resourced individuals?
I understand that,
But that was the decision process behind it.
but how come they didn't draw the money from the unassigned funds to have no tax impact? Is it not as important as a rainy day fund?
We just never did, yeah, I mean.
Can we do that? It'll be easier to pass if it says no impact, right?
I mean, we could do it. This is how we chose to bring forth this warrant.
Question has been answered. Ralph?
Thank you. I'm not objecting to it. I'm just concerned about, because when I go through the county budget, which I do have to do, part of my job, this comes up also. And also lists the number of people in each community that is being served by these agencies. And that's how we come up at the county level as how much money we fund. So it looks like we're funding, in some cases, twice. So this is a big question that I will bring up when we're going through this on our county budget, because they list, this is the number of people in Litchfield, this is the number of people in Nashua, this is the number of people in Merrimack, all these same agencies that the county, through your county taxes, is funding. So I've run across this over the years, and I keep having the same problem. Are we funding them twice, or are we giving them more money? So what's the problem? And I think maybe at the county level, we need to really look at why everybody, all the other towns too, is funding the same agencies, and we at the county are also. So it's all your own taxes, yeah. Thank you.
Okay. I don't see any more questions coming, so we are going to say that this will be on the ballot as written.
Thank you.
Next, Article 6, fire engine purchase. Shall the town vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $656,899 for the purpose of purchasing a fire engine with equipment and attachments for the fire department, and to utilize funds received from the American Rescue Plan Act for this purpose. Estimated 2023 tax rate impact is 0 cents. On this, we have Selectman Bob Leary and Interim Fire Chief Doug Nickel.
Good morning. So for 4 years now, we've been trying to replace one of our fire trucks. It's 28 years old. Typically for fire trucks get replaced every 10 to 15 years. We had a replacement program that we had back in the 90s, which we stopped for a couple of reasons. One being the old fire station that we used to be in. The fire station, every time we got a new fire truck, they'd come in bigger and bigger because of new technologies and whatnot. And at one point, we ended up having 5 fire trucks that were left outside because we didn't have space for them. But what we've found over the last few years with this truck that we're looking to replace is that it's only valued at $7,000. When we go to trade it in, basically, they're going to take this truck, they're going to bring it to a scrapyard, and they're going to give us $7,000 for it for trade-in. This past year has been very expensive for the fire department. We've put in $48,000 into our newest truck, which is 20 years old. We just recently put $25,000 into our second newest truck, which is 22 years old. And this truck that we're looking to replace needs probably about $100,000 worth of work. And I can't justify putting $100,000 into a truck that's valued at $7,000. Some of the work, as you can see from looking at the slide that we need, is a pump overhaul. The fire pump is what pumps the water when there's a fire. We've already overhauled this pump 3 other times. Or actually, I'm sorry, this would be the 3rd time if we chose to do it, to overhaul the pump. Just like anything else that has water going through it, you have corrosion internally from pipes. This fire pump, if we even put that kind of money into it, all the metal piping that feeds the waterways, they're all at a point, they're so brittle because they're 28 years old, that once you start springing a leak and you start trying to do any repairs, basically you're just throwing money after money after money, because once you start trying to unsettle old metal, everything's just going to start breaking on it. So our current fleet that we have right now, our youngest truck is 20 years old. Our oldest truck is 32 years old. And also, we've been having a lot of instances in the last year where trucks have been going out of service. We had a fire back in June at Wilson Farms, and right after the fire happened, the engine that was pumping the fire, our newest truck, we couldn't shut it off. And we ended up having to go out of service for over 3 months. And at a cost of $48,000, we weren't expecting to pay for to have that work done. And then, as I was saying, once that truck came back, we started looking at the other trucks to make sure we weren't going to have that same problem. And then we ended up putting $25,000, and that last truck just came back about 2 weeks ago. Every time I hear people talk about fire trucks, people ask, how often do you have fires in town? We do 728 calls a year. We do all hazards, from water rescue, water problems, car accidents, extrication, hazardous materials, we do it all. So these fire trucks that we have, they're basically big toolboxes. We have to be ready to go to any type of emergency at any hour of the day or night. And sometimes we need multiple trucks to go to these incidents. So these trucks not only carry water for when there is a fire, but they also carry all those other tools that we need to do our job. So we're at a point where we're looking to replace the 1995 fire truck. Again, we started this process about 4 years ago. 2 of those years, because of COVID, because of budget constraints, it wasn't brought forward to the voters. Last year, we came forward with a fire truck, which we actually got a really good deal on. Everything is so volatile right now that they can't even guarantee prices for more than 30 days on a truck. So the fire truck last year was going to be $682,000, and there's been 4 price increases in the last year that had we went forward with a warrant article for a lease purchase this year, we would have been talking close to $800,000 for a fire truck. While we were going through this process, the Board of Selectmen, the Budget Committee, different members of town asked if we could look into a used fire truck, which I did. Used fire trucks for our purpose that don't exist. You can go online and go on the web and you'll find fire trucks, but they're city fire trucks that hold 500, 600 gallons of water. We need a minimum of 1,000 gallons of water for us for a rural community. We're not a city fire department. When we looked over the last year, we found 2 fire trucks that met our criteria. One was the same age as a 20-year-old truck that's our newest truck, and they wanted almost $600,000 for it. And another truck was even older and was sold anyways. But we actually found an opportunity recently where we could purchase what they call a demo fire truck. So a demo fire truck is something that just like when you go to a car dealership, fire trucks are custom made. So what they do is the manufacturer or the sales company will make a fire truck so they can bring around, so you can see their quality of build, see the type of compartmentation, and just, find what fits for each community. The company that we deal with has had a fire truck that they started about 1.5 years ago being constructed. They don't tell anybody about it. They don't tell the salespeople about it. They throw it in the pipeline, and then as it gets closer to being completed, then what they do is they'll offer it out to either go around and be shown to other fire departments, or they'll sell it outright. I was able to find a fire truck from the manufacturer that we were looking to bid a fire truck from. And because this fire truck started on the line 1.5 years ago, it was before all these major price increases. So they only charge you for what they paid for the truck. So this truck came in at $656,899, which is actually below the $682,000 we were asking for last year, and overall is a $200,000 savings than if we were to order a truck today and wait 2 years for it. The other good thing is this truck that we're looking at is on hold. The town was able to do a contract with no money down. And if it fails at voting, no harm, no foul, they'll sell it to somebody else. This truck is actually due to be completed at the end of this month. So instead of waiting 2 years for a fire truck at $200,000 more, we could actually have a fire truck probably at the end of March, beginning of early April of this year. And here's basically what the fire truck looks like. To many people, it looks like a fire truck. And that's it, just being on the line. So the thing that's nice about this new fire truck, again, most people, you keep your cars for 10 years. Some people keep them for 15 years. Truck we're replacing is 28 years old. The newer fire trucks that are out, because they're out in the salt and the weather all year long, when they go to fires, they're pumping at high RPMs for hours on end. They come with better warranties now. So this fire truck, if we are to vote yes on it, is completely made of stainless steel. So it's got huge corrosion resistance to it. Comes with 25-year warranties on the frame rails, which are usually what rusts. The body, and then the cab structure, because actually the cab structure is made of aluminum, is a 10-year warranty. But basically, we'll have these high warranties to protect us. And then if everybody chooses to vote for the truck, Basically, we can take some wear and tear off of our 2 other older trucks and give them some rest. This would become our first run fire truck. It would go to the majority of calls, but it wouldn't go to every call. We still would need all the other trucks that we have. I do get a question a lot of times. People will ask, well, how come you need so many fire trucks? There's a formula that's used for fire protection. That's why if you look at the city of Nashua, Manchester, Londonderry, they have different amounts of fleets of fire truck, and it's for the fire protection requirements of each individual community. For us, for a residential town with mostly residential houses and some commercial structures, we're required to have 3,500 gallons a minute of water to be able to put out the average fire in this town. Our fire trucks that we have right now have 1,250 gallon per minute pumps. So basically having 3 engines would give us the water supply that we need to adequately put out any fire that occurs in town. The truck that we're looking to get has 1,000 gallons of water and a 1,500 gallon per minute pump. So basically we would be increasing the amount of water supply that we could throw at a fire. And basically that's it.
I told him he had 4 minutes. I think he blew it. So, this has been a touchy item in town for a few years, and last year when ARPA became available, we didn't know that it could be used for this. And the board's position was that if we spend this money on a fire truck and the federal government comes back and says, sorry, it's not permitted, then the town's on the hook for, what, $800,000, and we would have had to write them a check. That would not have made us look good. So we decided to put it on a vote. It failed. And then during the year, we were informed that we could in fact use ARPA funds, okay? So my position on that was always, okay, but we're not going to spend all our money on one spot. We need to spread it out. There's several departments that need items in this town. So when this deal came around, I was actually very quick to jump on board because it meant that we could get a new backhoe for the dump and the highway department, and we could get the police their tasers and their IT upgrades in their cruisers. So we were able to spread the money out. And I think we spent it all with, I think we had an excess of like $6,000 maybe that came out of the revolving fund at the dump. So I think it was a really good use of the money, and I hope the people in this town will support it, because with the money we've just dumped into the other truck, which they said should get us another 10 years, and we have this one which should get us 20 years, and I made Doug promise no new trucks, we should be all set for quite a few years. So I hope the town will support this. I think it's well worth spent money. Thank you.
Okay, questions or comments on fire truck purchase? Oh, we got Rich.
Just a couple of things I'd like to expand on what was said previously. Last year, we had a proposal, came before the town for a new fire truck. The Budget Committee was forced to not recommend because of the rules that they have to live by. When the town vote came out, I was surprised that of all the warrant articles that were there, the fire truck was turned down. And I attribute that to a couple of things. One was the Budget Committee lack of recommendation, which people tend to follow. And the second thing was I'm sorry, I forgot what I was going to say. But that was the key thing. When the select board became aware that we could use ARPA funds, and I'd just like to explain just a second what ARPA funds are. ARPA funds are federal money. They were passed during the COVID outbreak, and they are meant to replace revenue that was lost during COVID. Well, now, and it was almost $1 million. I can't see that we lost all that money, but we went back and forth, and this is money that we have to use. We can't turn it back to the taxpayers, which would be the preference of a lot of people. But when we became aware that we could use ARPA funds, we had pressure to go ahead and buy the fire truck. Because we've always felt that there was a need for it. We, as a select board, we decided that since the town people voted no, and no means no, we were not going to do it, no matter how big the need was, and the fact that there was no tax impact was enough reason that you could make a case to go ahead and buy the fire truck. So we did not do that, and actually we're kind of lucky we didn't do that, because now it seems like we're getting a better deal at a lower price and quicker. It's not like we have to wait 2 years to get this fire truck. We're going to get it quicker. So I would urge you folks to support this. We're dealing with some really old trucks, and the maintenance on these things is going up and up and up. We need to spend some money on this new fire truck. So I'd appreciate that.
Okay, so now, questions or comments about the purchase of a fire truck? Evidently, that was a great presentation. There was no questions. You will see Article 6 as written. Article 7, Property Reevaluation Expendable Trust Fund. Shall the town vote to raise and appropriate $25,000 to be placed in the Property Reevaluation Expendable Trust Fund as previously established? This sum to come from the unassigned fund balance and no amount to be raised from new taxation. Estimated 2023 tax impact is 0 cents. On this one, we have Selectman Dr. Queenan.
Hi, thank you. Almost good afternoon. The Constitution and the statutes of the state of New Hampshire require that property subject to a tax based on value to be revalued at least every 5 years. The purpose of this article is to maintain true property values. The next property revaluation is due in the year 2025. The cost to do a property revaluation is approximately $100,000. The December 2022 Property Revaluation Expendable Trust Fund had a balance of $50,030.23. The goal is to establish a $100,000 balance in this fund by 2024. Level funding cost over 4 years will avoid a property tax spike. That last bullet means is that by placing $25,000 into this account each of the 4 years, we, the town, will have already set aside $100,000 needed to pay for the next property revaluation, which is due in 2025. This will avoid creating the tax spike of trying to raise the entire $100,000 in 1 year.
Questions or comments for Article 7? Seeing none. You'll see it on the ballot as written. Article 8, Fire Weekend Coverage. Shall the town vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $24,320 to fund the fire station approximately 32 hours per weekend, effective starting April 1st, 2023? These hours would be filled with on-call firefighters, therefore there would be no associated benefits or other related costs. Estimated 2023 tax impact of 2 cents. On this, we have Selectman Bob Leary and Interim Fire Chief Doug Nickel.
So for people that don't know, we have a combination fire department. We have 2 full-time firefighters, of which I am one. We work Monday through Friday, 8 to 4. And that started in 1986 because of, at that point in time, everybody that used to be on the volunteer fire department started working out of town. And we started having the schools that needed to be protected, so they started having full-time firefighters. Back in the 80s, when we started, the fire department was doing approximately 150 to 200 calls. Again, today, last year we just did 728 calls. We've never grown the fire department personnel over 30 years. And we're at a point now where we're just getting busier and busier with calls. We were doing, back in the day, 32 calls a month. Now we're doing between 60 and 80 calls a month. For January, we just did, I think it was 64 calls for the month of January. What we're finding is that the majority of our calls, everything is just spread out. So basically every day of the week, we do calls. So here we are at noontime on a Saturday, and we've already done 4 calls for today. All of them happening from midnight on. But what happens is on the weekends, just like everybody else, you have kids that are in sports, you have, errands, you want to do things with your family. And we have 24 firefighters that are on call 24/7, 365, and they don't get paid to stay in town. So what happens is on Saturdays, when everybody is in town and doing sports and whatnot, we're doing about 200 calls. Last year we did 200 calls between Saturday and Sunday. And it's hard for us because it could be a car accident that needs many people, could be a fire, or it could be a medical emergency, which could be somebody choking, having anaphylactic shock, having a heart attack. And time is critical in what we do. Having 2 people Saturday and Sunday at the fire station provides us so that within, on average, for the majority of town, a 1 to 4 minute response time from the fire station when it's manned. Our furthest part of town is the 102 corridor and down by James Way Drive and the Noel's Tree Farm on 3A, and that's about 7 minutes. So during the week, we have good coverage. But now you got to add 3 to 5 minutes to that nights and weekends. The other issue that we have too is the weather. If it's snowing or icy out, that's going to add to the response time. So again, by having 2 people Saturday and Sunday, they can go to all the normal calls that we have, lift assist, regular medical emergencies, because they'd be going with the ambulance. And it's going to cut down and it's going to give better service to the community. And also it's going to help us because it's stressing our department right now on the weekends when everybody wants to go out and do something, but everybody's afraid to leave because if a call comes in, who's going to go to it? And, sir.
Okay. With the town growing like it is and the amount of activities going on the weekends, I mean, you drive by Sawmill or Dara or any of the other places and you see youth sports, and at the schools, the same thing. Having full-time people at the fire station on the weekends would help if anything went wrong down there. This is something that's kind of a personal crux to me, is that this was originally in the budget, and I will not support a budget that has new employment without going to the voters first. So we pulled it out of the budget, we put it on a warrant, which was the right thing to do for the select board. These guys do a great, great job, and the taxpayers in this town deserve to have weekend coverage. I think it's very important with the amount of seniors in this town, and that number is growing, to the ability for these folks to be able to get out of that building and get somewhere within 10 minutes to be safe, I think could be the matter of life and death. And even yesterday morning, I'm driving to work right around 7 o'clock. They don't start till 8 o'clock I was greeted by a siren at my back door. There's this guy going to south end of Litchfield because a gentleman had fallen in his driveway, and he's outside in the cold. I mean, that's the stuff that goes on, and it goes on the weekends too. So I would hope that the voters in this town would support this. I think it is well past due and well-deserved, and I think Litchfield has earned it. Thank you.
Okay, do we have questions or comments?
Yeah, John Latcher, 10 McElwain Drive. How would it be determined who fills in for these positions? Is it on a seniority list, or?
So what we do is we have both our, so 99% of the fire department, other than somebody just walking in the door, are EMTs. And we're EMTs like myself at the basic level. We have advanced EMTs, we have paramedics. So what we would do is we would put out a list in advance and cover those shifts, see who's available. We also have a per diem roster. Per diems are other firefighters that live in Londonderry, Hudson, who have the same qualifications. And if our guys aren't available, then we would reach out to them in order to fill those shifts. But it would be filled for 8-hour shifts, both Saturday and Sunday with 2 people. And that schedule would be put out, probably a month at a time.
Let me just ask this question. It might sound like a stupid question, but what if somebody can't fill in a position? Would you do it, or? would you be
I
able to
could,
do it?
I certainly could. I mean, we've never not filled a shift before, no matter, we use per diem now, and we use the call department now. I get vacation time every year, and so doesn't the other full-timer. And so that's what happens, is we use both our call department and these per diem people to cover shifts during the regular work week.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? You'll see the fire weekend coverage as written on the ballot. Article 9, General Assistance Expendable Trust Fund. Shall the town vote to raise and appropriate $10,000 to be placed in the General Assistance Expendable Trust Fund as previously established? This sum to come from the unassigned fund balance and no amount to be raised from new taxation. Estimated 2023 tax impact is 0 cents. On this, we will have Selectman Bob Leary.
Hello again. This is one that's near and dear to me. A lot of people in town are doing very well these days, and we've seen by the houses that are going up, the incomes are rising, and I think it is just very important not to forget those who are less fortunate and those who have trouble making ends meet through whatever circumstances. So what this does is this goes into a fund. The town has to provide assistance. It's the law. And this fund here establishes that we have money to take care of those people who are in need. It could be rent, it could be fuel assistance, it could be almost anything. There are guidelines to make sure that it's not spent where it doesn't need to be spent. However, if somebody is in trouble, they know they can come to the town. And again, it's something that's very important to me personally, and I think that it's a worthwhile investment. Happy to take any questions.
Any questions or comments? Seeing none, Article 9 will be presented as written. Article 10, Fire Vehicle and Equipment Repair Expendable Trust Fund. Shall the town vote to raise and appropriate $40,000 to be placed in the Fire Vehicle and Equipment Repair Expendable Trust Fund as previously established? This sum to come from the unassigned fund balance and no amount to be raised from new taxation. Estimated 2023 tax rate impact is 0 cents. On this, we will have Selectman Rich LaSalle's.
This is the expendable trust fund. It's when you have a bunch of fire trucks that are over 20 years old, you have needs for maintenance, repair. Fire pumps are very expensive to fix. So what we do is set aside this money in case we have a big repair that comes up that we don't have enough money in the regular budget. So that's what this expendable trust fund is for.
Any questions or comments?
Is there anything that says that you?
Excuse me, please state
Tim
your name.
Kearns, One Brickyard Drive.
Thank you.
Sorry. Figured you'd know me by now. Is there anything that says this can be used for anything else, or is this going to be similar to like the school department stuff, where if something bad happens in the town, unrelated to the fire vehicles, you can still vote to use it, or is it dedicated?
This is dedicated, it's an expendable trust fund, so it's like a bank account that can only be used for that.
Understood, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none?
What's that?
Article 10 will be on the ballot as written. Article 11, Public Works Expendable Trust Fund. Shall the town vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $60,000 to be placed in the Public Works Expendable Trust Fund as previously established? This sum is to come from the unassigned fund balance and no amount to be raised from new taxation. Estimated 2023 tax rate impact is 0 cents. On this, we have Selectman Rich LaSalle's and Selectman Kevin Lynch.
All right.
Good morning, I think, still. This is similar. We've had this before. What we try to do here is establish an account for the breakdowns or replacement of equipment in the highway, salt and stuff like that, and other repairs and stuff like that, to establish a fund, because these things don't always run every week, okay? So it basically is the same as the one above they just talked about, but it's to keep a fund going, and we always try to keep it. Right now, it's to establish a balance of $100,000, as you can see. Well, it doesn't show it in this one, because I didn't press the button, did I? Nope. Oh, well, which button do you press?
There you go.
Oh, good, that's how it works. The arrow. Computers I'm not friendly with. But it's the same idea. We've had this before. It's a savings account. We try to keep it going and be able to use it when we need it, especially when the fleet is getting better, but it's still fuel and all the other stuff is so associated. And that's what it's all about, trying to keep the balance. And as you see, there's not much of a tax increase, 0. Okay?
Rich, you have anything to add? Okay. Any questions or comments? Hearing none. Article 11 will be on the ballot as written. Article 12, additional assistant librarian hours. Shall the town vote to increase the weekly hours of the assistant librarian number 2 position from Assistant librarian number 2 position from 8 hours per week to 24 hours per week effective April 1, 2023, for an estimated annual wage, benefit, and other related costs of $13,312, and further vote to appropriate the sum of $9,920 for wage, benefit, and other related costs for the period of April 1, 2023 to December 31st, 2023. The estimated 2023 tax rate impact is 1 cent. On this article, we have librarian Donna Ferguson. Come on up.
Can I sit down here?
Come on up. We like everybody to see and hear us well.
Donna Ferguson, 1 Martin Lane, Library Board Chair. So the need for the assistant librarian dedicated to children's services is becoming more critical as our attendance numbers continue to increase. The position of assistant librarian will allow for more story times, after-school programs, and outreach to occur on a regular basis. Currently on Tuesdays, the infant toddler story time yields approximately 20 children and their caregivers, reaching the capacity for the entire children's room. Couple that with every other Tuesday, a half a dozen knitters are also present at the same time upstairs. Our parking lot is filled and people are parking on the side street. Employees are parking off-street or in the bump out across Old Stage Road. An assistant librarian will have the skill sets to provide another story time during the week. This should help alleviate some of the crowds by dispersing some families to another story time day. Assistant librarians have full access to patron information while library pages do not. This means they have the ability to provide complete services to patrons' accounts regarding circulation, billing, and general updates. Recently, especially during summer reading program, library pages have had to work beyond the scope of their typical job responsibilities in order for us to provide the level of programming the public desires. Library pages' primary job functions are to check in materials and organize them on shelves. With the addition of an assistant librarian, the library pages can complete their task in a timely manner, and the assistant librarian can handle patron services. During the school year, an assistant librarian will have the skill sets to provide additional after-school programming for children ages 5 to 8. Currently, the library does not have any dedicated programming for this age group. Having the assistant librarian at the children's desk during the day will provide opportunities for the children's librarian to do more outreach to local elementary schools and daycares. Outreach to greater community promotes the library and its services and demonstrates the ability of literacy beginning at a young age. The Aaron Cutler Library is a gathering place of new residents and young families. Everyone is welcome to join in on activities, programs, and events. For parents and infants, for parents with infants, sometimes the library is the only place for them to meet new people. In supporting the library, you're also making the decision to support your neighbors, friends, and attract new residents to Litchfield. Libraries are not just books. Libraries are community centers for people of all ages to gather and grow.
Any questions or comments?
John Latcher, 10 McGowan Drive. It's not recommended by the Board of Selectmen or the Budget Committee. Can anybody from the Selectmen come up and tell us why? Voted no?
Any selectmen that voted no want to speak to this? The request was of a selectman that voted no.
It says 3, so.
I voted no on this because I think it's just a matter of spending priorities, that we have hard choices to make, and based upon that, I did not feel that this assistant librarian position was justified.
The request was also for a budget committee member, correct?
Yes, thank you. Yeah.
Okay.
John Davidson, I'll echo, what Rich said. I think when we looked across the board, it was a very tough year. We went back and revoted some things that we thought were higher priorities, like the weekend fire hours. It doesn't downplay the importance of the library in this community. It plays a vital part for kids, for families. I think this was a very tight year when it came to the budget, and we had to look at places where we could support and where we could not. That's what it came down to.
Thank you.
Scott Taylor, Budget Committee. I voted no as well. Reason for it, in the season that the budget came in over the tax cap and we needed to take action in regards to eliminating a police officer position, I did not feel that it was appropriate that we would go ahead and add in additional hours in this area when we're doing that type of cut.
Any further question or comments? Hearing none, we will see Article 12 as written. Article 13, street discontinuance. Class 6 road discontinuance, to see if the town will vote to completely discontinue parcel 20-18 road, a Class 6 road. If discontinued, the owners of the property abutting the road will continue to have private rights to the use of the road to access their property. On this article, we have Selectman Kevin Lynch.
Thank you. This is, let me get to the map. Oops. I got it. If you look at it, okay, it's a piece of land in town. There's a right-of-way up in that far left-hand corner, that double line there. That used to be what we call the trolley track. We used to go all the way through town. It's all over the place. So what it is, it ended up being a separate parcel of land, but it's basically owned by the person around it over the time because no one's taken it. We got it all through town. So what it is just to take that away. By law, we can do this by town vote. And that's what we're trying to do it now. It doesn't serve any purpose. It's not wide enough. And on the other side of the street where it is, they put it a fun way. Okay?
I'm sorry.
Okay.
Questions or comments have to be brought to the mic.
You can't see it?
That was my question. Where in town is this located?
It's right across from Mel's. I'll say that. It's where the pit is up there. Okay? Any questions?
Any further questions or comments? Seeing none. Article 13 will be on the ballot as written. Article 14, Veterans Tax Credit. Shall the town of Litchfield readopt the operational Veterans Tax Credit in accordance with RSA 7228-2 for an annual tax credit on residential property of $750. Majority vote is required. Note, this article is required because the legislation expanded the eligibility criteria for this credit to include individuals who have not yet been discharged from service in the armed forces. On this article, we will have Selectman Bob Leary and Selectman Rich LaSalle.
I'm not even going to put it up. This is a housekeeping duty deal with the state where they're including the active service people in the veterans tax credit. The town voted to give all veterans a tax break last year, which had followed one that was done a few years ago. And what this does is it means if somebody is on active duty, they could be stationed somewhere else, but if they own a property in Litchfield, they will be entitled to the same tax break that veterans get. Okay, so it's cleaning up a gray area so that everyone's treated the same.
A key part of this is that in order for the veterans tax credit, even the one that's currently active, in order for that as well as the new one to take effect, we have to vote positively on both of them. So that's a key thing. And again, it's to extend the current tax credit for active duty people, for instance, somebody that's on active duty in the reserves, they would get that credit.
This is kind of a loop question. If no means no, does that mean if it fails that the previous ones will no longer be applicable?
The only thing that, to my knowledge, and somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, but the state has a $50 tax credit, that I think that would still be in effect. Am I correct in that?
You're correct, Rich. It would fall back to the $50.
It would fall back to $50. So that would still be there.
So the one currently we have that's allowing the people, the previous people, is just going to, if this fails, that one's just going to go away then?
Unfortunately, yes. Go ahead.
Go ahead, no, you finished. I was going to, my part just is going to go to the, as we discussed before, is there no tax impact on this one? And if there isn't, how come it doesn't say that there isn't?
Well, it's just hard to see what the impact would be, you know, because we don't know how many active people, active duty people.
So from the lawyer man that we just discussed, number one, he said that the regulation said there shall be if there is no tax impact, and there's no statement on this saying that there is or attack, and what he just said is it's just too difficult. So how can you justify the stuff on number one, and then when we're down at number 14 to not have any of that shall language in there?
Attorney Driscoll will come up and address that.
I mean, my understanding is that there's $375,000 last year that was part of this, that was credited, and then to say have nothing mentioned here whether there is or it isn't, and having all the previous articles that had no impact, how come this one doesn't say it doesn't have an impact? And that must mean it does, and then according to you, then the shall take effect and it has to have what it is. I understand it's hard, but this is a double hypocrisy thing going on. The first one doesn't. How come this one doesn't?
Again, the town had voted that there needs to be a tax impact requirement based on the Board of Selectmen's determination. So what this article does is this establishes reestablishes an exemption. There was the legislative piece that was part of it. So for those other articles, you're spending the money. You're appropriating and spending the money. These are exemptions. These are things that reduce people's tax liability based on their veteran status. Okay, so it's not about the money that's being raised and appropriated, it's money that people are not paying. So
it's the question I had before. I made that same comment. There was no appropriation in that particular one that claims zero as in tax impact. There was no appropriation. You were talking about the tax impact, and this is kind of directly the same thing. We're talking about money that we're not going to be collecting, and I understand that, but the first one was the same thing, and it said it didn't have an impact. So does this have an impact or doesn't have an impact?
Again, you're stuck on the part that you're not listening to me saying, that there's two pieces.
Yep.
The select board is in charge of both. They determine what a tax impact is per the statute. They say, okay, is this a tax impact? Then they determine to the extent that tax impact is in a per dollar basis or per penny basis here. So
I'll just point out that the selectman said there was a tax impact, but he couldn't just figure it out. Didn't he just say that?
Well, they're unable to figure it out because the applications haven't happened yet. So they have seen fit, based on reviewing what is in front of them, that the tax impact is not applicable to this article.
So there's no tax impact, or there is a tax impact?
Again, you are getting stuck on the exact thing I'm saying, that they're determining what a tax impact is and then the dollar expense. You're saying they're the same thing, and they are not.
Well, last year, my understanding was last year that there was a $375,000 was issued as a credit, and now we're going to just expand that. So we know those figures. Why wasn't? Well, I guess it's a matter for the selectmen. How come there is no tax? Who from the selectmen can tell me why this one doesn't have a tax impact, or what it is, and if it?
Because we don't know. We don't know how many active service people are in the town. I'm sorry.
Appreciate that. But there is a tax. So there is a tax impact.
There might be none. There may be none. But
Last
we
year there
don't
was
know.
$375,000.
And we won't know until somebody comes in and applies.
But
If
we
nobody
have-
comes in and applies, then there's nothing.
Okay. But last year's doesn't count then?
Last year's doesn't count. This is this year. This is totally new. Last year, you had a tax impact.
Right. And then this year, the
Because there
same
was a
people are going to apply. but
Because it was a figure that you knew the answer to.
Okay.
This, we don't know. It's unknown. There could be one, it could be 100. We don't know.
if it helps at all, we municipalities, across southern New Hampshire have been talking about this. So, reached out and gotten information from Hudson, from Nashua. We're all in the same boat with this. The legislature, the governor, they changed this to clear up some language, right? It's really housekeeping. We're making sure that everybody is included that should receive the credit. We have no idea, and believe me, we have looked. We've looked to veterans associations, we've looked to the state to get an idea of how many active people live in Litchfield that could qualify. But there's some other parts to the bill and to the qualification process that even the DRA, the Department of Revenue, is still working out. So there's no way for us to estimate to you what that impact would be. They haven't applied, so if I was standing here today and you asked me what the impact would be, I would tell you 0. There's nothing, because there's no applications, there's no further applications. What we tried to do was be very forthcoming and lay out to you if there were additional applications. And again, these applications would have to come in between the day of vote and April 15th, because that's the deadline for 2023. If you got 9 to 24 applications and they were approved, they met all the qualifications, it would have a tax impact of 1 cent. From our estimations, if I was being honest with you, in my personal opinion, looking at the data that I've looked at, do I think you're going to have that? No, I don't. But all we could do was put forth to you our best estimates on the information that we have available to us. There is no answer to the question. No one has it. Everybody has been looking at it. So I think we've been very forthcoming with the information that we've provided, even though today, with the article in front of you, and March 5th, 14th, with the article at vote, the tax impact would be 0, right? Because there are no applications. Until you approve it, they can't come forward.
So how come it doesn't say that then? I get it. That's
Does
all.
say that.
You told me the tax impact 0, but, well, then it should say it.
All right, are there any other questions or comments here? Seeing none. Rich, you'd like to say something?
Yes, this has nothing to do with the warrant articles or anything, but I just wanted to let you folks know, Robert and I are wearing this little badge here on our shirts. A few weeks ago, we had a tragedy here in town where former citizen and a current firefighter and a firefighter in Hudson named Todd Berube was killed in an automobile motorcycle accident on Route 102. And Todd had been a resident here in town for many years, had 2 children who came up in the school system here in town, and Todd was a current firefighter for Litchfield. He also, as a member of the Hudson ambulance department, he had visited many homes that had health calls here in town, ambulance calls. So a tragedy like this of a young man with a young family, it's going to put a strain on that family. These stickers were put together by the Hudson Fire Department as a way of supporting the family with a token, I think it's $10 for these badges. And it goes directly to the family with no strings attached. The fire department, the Litchfield Fire Department, still has some of these stickers, and you're free to go down and pick one up. They're $10 a piece, and they go to the family to support them. So I'd just like you to consider that. Consider Todd and his family and the service that he gave to the Hudson and the Litchfield community through the years. Thank you.
Okay, so to get back on track, there is no further question or comments on Article 13, correct? I'm sorry, Article 14, that will be on the ballot as written. Next, we have Article 15, the Veterans Tax Credit, which they're walking away when they still have to do this one. Shall the town of Litchfield readopt the All Veterans Tax Credit in accordance with RSA 7228B for an annual tax credit on residential property which shall be equal to the same amount of the standard operational veterans tax voted by the town of Litchfield under RSA 7228. This article is required because the legislature expanded the eligibility criteria for this credit to include individuals who have not yet been discharged from service in the armed forces. On this article, we also have Selectman Bob Leary and Selectman Rich LaSalle.
On this article, the only thing I'm going to say is ditto. Any questions?
Any questions or comments? I think just to be clear, you want to make sure they know that this one has to be approved as well. They both need to be approved in order for the credit to go through. With that clarification, and no questions or comments, Article 15 will be on the ballot as written. So, with that said, we have completed all our warrant articles for today. Please remember that voting on these articles will occur on March 14th, 2023, from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. at the CHS gym, right down the hall. If there is any other business to come before the, is there any other business to come before the meeting? Go ahead.
Okay. You done? Personal attack, sir?
No, I don't think so. Go ahead.
I'd like to make a motion in accordance, and this is written, let's do in accordance with New Hampshire RSA 3139 to see that the town will adopt a bylaw that any statements placed in the town of Litchfield warrant are the full truth, including the warrant that includes no amounts to be raised by taxation when authorizing the expenditure of unassigned fund balances, without also clearly stating that the unassigned fund balances can be used to reduce your tax bill by being applied as revenue. The tax impact on tax rate and potential impact on your tax bill are different, and the estimated tax rate impact on this is $0. The New Hampshire Secretary of State has referred this to as a practice as a political tactic.
So you made a motion, correct? We are going to have Attorney Driscoll come up and
So at this juncture, you cannot add any potential articles to be voted on by the legislative body. Per 39.2, anything needed to be on the warrant and properly warned in order for everybody in the legislative body to be able to come here and vote on it. The subject matter had to be known. So this...
Can I make a comment? That this has no tax impact, and it was warranted and brought up, and it's in the meeting of the Budget Committee as being read at the Budget Committee, so it has been reviewed and it has no impact on funds, as I understand it.
Those are not the standards. So
The warrant is under the hands of the selectmen. They bring the warrant for the legislative body. The legislative body then acts on it. In order for something to be on there, they either have to place it on it or it has to be a petition warrant article, again, to properly warn the legislative body to act on it. I don't, even if this did have the requisite petition with it, I don't believe it does. It hasn't been filed timely in order to be properly warned. So this is not an article that can be acted on.
We've had in the past approved motions from the floor and have been voted on at the point.
I don't know that that's happened and been added to the warrant.
Okay, I understand.
So with that, this motion will be disqualified. So again, I'll ask, is there any other business to come before the meeting? Please remember to turn in your ballot sheets to the stage or to the ballot clerks before leaving. Hearing no request for further business at this time, I will accept a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? The ayes have it. I would like to thank you all for coming today. Have a great day. Stay warm.